just testing the sound. Everybody hear me?
Yes, yes. Loud and clear.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Hi everybody, welcome to Central Library this morning. I'm David Duffy, Library Service Manager, and I'm delighted to welcome the Mayor and Madam Mayoress, Councillor Ashley Adams and Rosie Thatchell, to Central Library this morning, and to welcome everyone, both here physically and we're live streaming this event today as well. So hopefully there'll be a few people sitting at home online watching this event. Now, a little bit of housekeeping to begin with. There's no fire alarm expected today, but if the alarm goes off, then please follow the library team out to the building, and the point for everybody to go is Burger King. So outside Burger King. And no, as usual, no, it's not on me or on the council, but Burger King is the place to stand. One or two other bits and pieces. There's toilets on each floor, which are the behind the brown doors. And please help yourself to water, and can apologise for the heat in this building. Unfortunately, the building management systems failed in this building, so in this room. So, and that's why the windows aren't open. But so sorry about that. But we'll keep the doors open. And the programme for today is, after I finish waffling on, the Mayor is going to say a few words. And then I'm going to hand over to Value Sanctuary, and then there'll be a presentation of the Library Sanctuary Award, and then what I might say the highlight of the event is Gulwali and Christina. And then after that there'll be some refreshments and there'll be some food available, and of course networking. So I hope everyone has a good event today. We hope to start networking and food at about 12:30. So with that, I'm going to ask the Mayor if he'd like to say a few words.
Thank you. I think can you hear me at the back there? Excellent. So Sean Buller with the mic. So I'd like to officially launch Refugee Week here in Calderdale, which actually starts today. But this is actually the 5th event to take place, as there's so much happening in the celebrations, which is starting early in the borough, which I don't think does any harm at all. It's good to know we hit the ground running on this one, as it's so important. And we're in this magnificent library, not wishing to be political at all, but I was very much involved in the early days of getting it moved from where it used to be in these old dilapidated buildings to this location. And the thing I really love about it is the way that the designers, architects, builders, whatever, included the tower as part of it. So we've got a lovely, modern, very impressive library, but we've got links with the past in Halifax, and that wonderful, is it an oriel window, if I remember my things properly. So it's a magnificent library, and we're surrounded by books containing millions, literally millions of written words, novels with imaginary characters and real life stories. I think we're going to be hearing a little bit later some real life stories. And this week is all about sharing and listening to stories from those fleeing home countries and seeking sanctuary here in the UK. It's so important that that's available and made as easy and supported as possible. It's a privilege to have Gulwali Passarlay, is that, did I get this correct? Pronunciation. Thank you very much. To share his story, and I hope this inspires any young writers in the room or generally in the library in Calderdale at large to pick up pens or to tap away on keyboards and start doing some writing of their own. During the week, people will come together and share conversations, fun events, photo exhibitions, food and so much more to help create a warm and welcoming environment for those seeking sanctuary in the borough. And I did a little bit of reading up before the event, and there was a little section there where it talked about the bird of freedom. and I actually managed to find 5 minutes this morning to make a bird creaker, which I think is just a lovely image, isn't it? You know, birds can fly anywhere they like, and we need people to be able to fly away from horrible things and horrible situations, and fly to a sanctuary where they can be looked after and supported and held. So very much look forward to the rest of this week and this particular day, and thank you very much. And over, I think, to Gulwali. Thank you.
Very good.
Hello everyone. My poem and Teja, in collaboration together. The title of the poem is Seeds of Compassion. I'm a tiny plant raised on your land. I hope to grow tall into a big tall tree. Under my shade where your worries will be freed, I will grow tall and high with my roots deeply sunken in the soil with dignity and compassion, contributing to the lush green shades that will soothe this world with beauty and peace, and will offer my flowers of fruits to others for their inner peace. Cruelty doesn't allow me to fulfill my dreams and duty. Dark negative powers and judgment destroy my beauty. Pour your compassion. It will grow me with full of love and emotions. Fertilize me with your kindness and acceptance. Help me grow with full compassion and let my roots find dignity. Let me grow tall, let me grow high. Let my roots touch the soil. Let me touch the sky. I'm a tiny plant. Help me compassionately to find my identity. I can be a friend. Your compassion will make me feel free. Help me grow. I'm a tiny plant raised upon your land. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Bola Eleni, and I'm one of the Valley of Sanctuary trustees. Refugee Week is the world's largest art and cultural festival celebrating the contribution, creativity and resilience of refugees and people seeking asylum. The first Refugee Week event was a street procession in the picnic of Sinbel in 1986. Over 45 years later, in a global celebration, in the UK events are held all across the country. The tragic event in Greece over the last few days and the loss of so many lives remind us of how important this week is in maintaining our focus all years on the plague of those seeking asylum. Also, there will be a vigil in Town Center today by Valley of Sanctuary and Stand Up to Racism today by 4 p.m. Please, you can join us for that. The theme for this year is compassion. As we heard the beautiful poem by Anna and Tija, compassion enables all of us to grow and strive. In Calvary, we have a full program of events across the borough. There are 15 events taking place involving over 23 different organizations, a real demonstration of welcome in action. This is the flyer here. You can check the QR code there so you can share with friends and family to join in the program. We are part of National City of Sanctuary movement. There are more than 130 local groups across the UK, city and towns of sanctuary. We are the Holy Valley. We are a network of member organizations and supporter residents. Our purpose to work together to make Calderday a place of welcome for refugees and people seeking sanctuary. Every year, we coordinate Refugee Week. In the last 12 months, we have produced a series of welcome videos where our members explain how they welcome people seeking sanctuary. Our project, I Am Skillful, I Am Talented, features local women seeking sanctuary, talking about their knowledge and experience. Trainings work alongside Matt, which is the one there, Matt Ridley, who is here filming now, to learn the skills to produce video for other events. Beach Hill School become our first school of sanctuary, and the Evan Bridge Picture House is the first cinema of sanctuary in the UK. Action. Sign up as a member of supporter. Hope I'm going to say most of us signing up. It's free. We won't take more from you. Free. Free of charge. It's free and easy. This is our flag.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah, Fedger and Bowler. I'm Laura Beasley. I'm one of the trustees with Calderdale Valley of Sanctuary. And we're looking now around the Library of Sanctuary Award. As Bowler mentioned, we're part of the National City of Sanctuary movement. And that movement has developed a number of awards which are given to organisations where they go above and beyond to really welcome and involve those seeking asylum and those who are refugees. Calderdale Library Service submitted its application to become a Library of Sanctuary in April of this year, and that took over a year to complete. So this is not an easy process to go through. It requires a lot of work, it requires a lot of evidence, and it is tested and it goes back and there's more work that's done. So it's a whole 12 months to get to that point in April. To meet the criteria, the library has to be able to demonstrate three things, and this is the same for all the awards. So it's the same for Beach Hill, and it was the same for the cinema of Sanctuary in Hebden Bridge. First of all, you have to show that you're learning, that you are really learning for your staff, for your customers, to understand how it is to arrive as somebody who is seeking sanctuary. What does that mean? And Dave is going to talk a bit about a couple of examples of that were in the application that came in. The second thing that you have to show is that you're going to embed it. So once you've understood that, what do you do about it? What changes? And a really great example for me here is that one of the changes that the library made is if someone comes in who is seeking sanctuary, they're not required to show an ID with their address on it. Understanding that can be a huge barrier, it can create a lot of fear. That feels like a small step, but actually it's enormous. And that very first step shows people that they are really welcome here as they are. And the third area is that you have to show how you're going to share your learning once you have achieved Sanctuary Award. And there are plans in the next year or two to do that, both within the council, but also with other libraries that are based in other organisations. In early May, a panel met to look at the application. We met with the library staff. On the panel, there were people here, living here now, who are seeking sanctuary. And their input was incredibly important and incredibly emotional, which David's going to touch on. And just, I suppose, their experience here of the library and how that might have varied from other libraries that they've accessed before. We also had feedback from the National Lead Advisor and the National Lead at the City of Sanctuary, who lead on all the library's work. They looked at the application to ensure that it was robust enough. They gave really positive feedback. And they said, I quote, "It sounds like there's some amazing work going on in Calderdale." Well, there certainly is. And then members of Calderdale Valley of Sanctuary were also on the panel. At the end of the panel meeting, we agreed unanimously that the library had met and exceeded a lot of the expectations that were there around the Sanctuary Award. I just want to say personally that I think for me, the thing that really shone out was the incredible commitment and passion of the staff, and that came through all the way through. And as someone who goes into the library as a local resident, I feel the same when I go in, and that really did come through the whole process. So it is my absolute pleasure to ask Gulwali to now present the Library of Sanctuary Award to David Duffy and Roberta Crossley from Colverdale Library Service.
Wonderful work. We want to each stand on each side so that we can take a photos. Yes. Is somebody taking pictures? This is such a wonderful achievement and recognition. Keep up the good work.
Just hold that for a second.
I thought they were giving me an award. Can I get a certificate, please?
This one this way.
Lovely. Wonderful. Should I give it to both of you or one of you?
Give it to Roberta.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. I'm a bit jealous, but
And I think it's over to me for a few minutes now. This means an awful lot to us as a library team. Public libraries play an important role in welcoming refugees and people seeking sanctuary in our communities. And we started out on this route even before Laura's mentioned. And I'd hoped Tahira would have been here today, but unfortunately she can't be, because it goes back to a conversation with Tahira and myself about the possibility of King Cross Library being a library of sanctuary a number of years ago. So we started to build on that work. We learned a lot through the process. And I hate the word process and journeys and everything else, but we have been on one. And as Laura touched on, it's about learning and development, and that's been key. Now, training and development. Round about 80 plus library staff went on a training, attended training, and went through the training course. Now, to read a quote, and there's an awful lot of quotes which talk about the positivity of the training. So why does it matter to us? To quote a member of the library team, I thought it was useful because even as someone with more than a passing knowledge of asylum and refugee systems, it showed me figures and information that I knew nothing about. The percentages of asylum seekers and refugees that are taken by different countries, for example, and where Britain figures within that, I felt were useful for discussing the issue with others. I learned a lot from the training, and I think everyone who works within the council ought to be given it. Unconscious bias is a big problem, and I would be surprised if anyone did the training and did not have a fixed idea about immigration, completely shut up by it. And as I say, there was an awful lot of comments about the training and the quality, and I would thank Value Sanctuary for their work and St Augustine's for their work on the training programme. What does it mean to a library service? And to quote from my colleague here, which you didn't know I was going to do, for us, this is not a project, something we do and walk away from. For us, it is a commitment to continue to deliver services to those seeking sanctuary and to keep expanding and improving our offer. We can only do that by continuing to engage with our communities and keeping ourselves informed of the changes within the community. So thank you, Roberta, for that, and I think that about sums it up. A lot of highlights within the process. Outreach, and I've got a member of the library team sitting here, Kelly, who's hiding under the chair at the moment, who worked with, who's done a lot of outreach in Halifax with people in a hotel and being housed in a hotel, and the children and encouraging library use within those children. Other highlights have included our work in partnership with Value Sanctuary, which has been fantastic, and I would like to give particular thanks to the chair, Laura Beasley, and also Amber, who's sitting next to me, Communications Officer, and the other members of Value Sanctuary for the help and support throughout the process. Also St Augustine's and others as well, because that's been some of the really positive moments, strengthening our relationship with the St Augustine's. Members of library staff who are in the audience who have been involved would see going to the open days and working with them and listening to people's powerful stories. Library stock's a challenge and an interesting one. All those years ago when I came into libraries, I didn't think I would be involved in export bans in Iran. Is an example of why we can't get stock, and the situation in Afghanistan. I don't really want to go there, but it's awful. Where traditionally, as far as languages, most spoken languages in Colville, apart from English, as far as stock were concerned, were traditionally Urdu, Punjabi, and Polish. But in recent times, we've had requests for Ukrainian, Farsi, Pashto, Dari, Arabic, Russian, Albanian, and Gujarati. Some have been easier than others to try and get stock. But the idea is we will try, because it's important people can see that there's books that they can relate to within the library. The panel exercise that Laura mentioned, we found that really useful. Some of the stories we listened to were incredibly moving, and I'd like to thank the panel for that and the way they conducted the whole process. But it made us think, and that's where we go to what next. But before I move on to what next, a little story about helping people, and it's what the team in the front line do. And they do is just that it's their nature. A few weeks ago at Central Library, a refugee with no English attended Central Library. Clearly that person was in some distress. His son was with him, and as I say, he had little English. Mohammed, who was around today, used Google Translate to communicate, and found out he'd recently been experiencing mental health issues and had been in the deals and was now home, but he was really struggling for money. And in this instance, he also had no shoes as well. So Mohammed was able to signpost him to the community fridge for food support and arrange for him to get some clothes. And I think that's just a good example of library staff signposting, using their local knowledge and technology to help someone when they couldn't speak the same language. There's more stories than that. That's just one that happened recently. So what next? What do we do next? Developments are ongoing and we're planning, because this award accreditation is 3 years. So it's how in 3 years' time can we submit an even better application than we have done this time round. What's been highlighted is the problems around digital inclusion and devices, so that's something that we're looking at as well. And a right-hand residence, because this is something that we feel would be important and to help to tell people's stories. So if anybody's got any funds sloshing around, please come and talk to Laura or myself, because we'd be delighted to talk to you about the potential. So I think that's enough from me, and with that, I'm going to hand over to Christina and Gulwali. Thanks.
Thank you very much. small feat to have gotten this. Got another 3 years to rest on your laurels and to show the achievements that you've already got. But just to explain a little bit, tell your amazing story, who I am and why I'm here. Who is this woman? I am Kirklees Library's writer in residence, and don't throw stones at me. I don't live in Calderdale. I'm over in Kirklees, but I'm from Manchester, which you might be able to tell by the accent a little bit. It does slip sometimes. But the reason I'm Kirklees writer in residence is primarily because of the work that I did with regards to writing books, but 2 books in particular about my great-great-great-grandfather, who is quite famous now. He was completely not famous. His life was covered up for over 100 years by my family, but he converted to Islam in 1898 when he was the age of 69. And we covered it up, and nobody knew anything about this. He was just a working-class man from Stalybridge. He became the mayor. He was just a local grocer, and he took this amazing journey, and he made these amazing discoveries for himself through reading. There were no public libraries in those days, folks, but he learnt to read. He didn't even have to go to school in those days. He taught himself to read. He became obsessed with reading newspapers. But the big thing that changed his life, which I found out through my research, was a place called the Corn Exchange, similar to the Peace Hall here. So he went there every week on the train from Stalybridge, buying his tea. And guess what? He met people from different cultures. And he met tea merchants and spice merchants from all around the world who told him a very different story to the story that the Times was telling about what was going on in the British Empire. And at that point, this incredibly clever man, self-educated, started thinking for himself and started listening to other people's stories. And I think that's the bit that I've got in particular from your story, and we can chat a little bit more about that. Very different experience, obviously a long time ago, but for my own family, when we started unpicking this story, the really strange thing was my brother converted to Islam 10 years before this discovery. He thought he was the only white working class lad in Manchester to make that journey. It turns out his own great-great-great-grandfather had. So we all have incredible stories to tell, and that's one of the things I've been doing as a writer in residence, is trying to encourage everybody. And the people that come up to me afterwards to talk, after I've done a talk, and say, oh, my family's really boring. They're not. There will be somebody. There will be an episode in your life that is fascinating to somebody else. There will be a grandmother or a grandfather or an uncle or an auntie who has got an amazing story that will resonate with you. So, without further ado, enough of my crazy family history.
Which is very interesting.
Thank you, but it's not like today. But I think the thing that drew me back here was when I came here to do that talk about Robert, it was the best talk that I've done. Not because of what I had to say, but the audience here were fantastic. And I think it shows exactly the path that you were on at the time. It was really emotional. We had people just coming to hear this crazy story, standing up, sharing their life experience of travel, of coming to England, of racism, of prejudice. People listening from groups, ethnicities that had never experienced that. And it was a great example, I think, of what was growing in Halifax at the time and which has continued today. So, well done again. I'm going to read the little bit about you, the blurb at the back of the book, to explain who you are. I'm sure everybody knows who you are, but this is the official.
That's quite philosophical, who we are.
Who we are. We can go into more depth then. Here we go. Gulwali Passarlay is an Afghan political refugee currently residing in the UK. He left Afghanistan in 2006 and graduated with a degree in politics from the University of Manchester. Now undertaking a Masters in Global Diversity Governance at Coventry University's Centre for Trust, Peace and Social Relations, he's recently founded My Bright Kite, a community interest company set up to empower refugee youth and create awareness about the challenges asylum seekers and refugees face in their host society. A global youth ambassador for the children's charity Their World, Gulwali has a long history of taking campaigning and leadership roles, including being the president of the United Afghan Peace Movement, chairperson of the Afghan Youth Movement, patron of the Separated Child Foundation, commissioner of the Children's Society, and ambassador of various organisations. He was one of the 2012 Olympics torchbearers and NHS Youth Forum. An award-winning activist, Gulwali has garnered, among others, the Distinguished Achievement Award, Student of the Year, the Collaborative Leadership Award, and the Manchester Leadership Gold Award, in recognition of his leadership and positive contribution. As a fervent advocate for many social justice issues and causes, Gulwali was nominated for the 2016 Nansen Refugee Award by the UNHCR.
That was a long time ago. I've given up on all of them.
You can fill in the gaps now of what you've done since then. There's just a quote. I have asked your permission.
You can speak on my behalf. I'm very happy.
Okay, no, that's why you're here. I will read a couple of bits out from the book,
Sure.
because things that really jumped out at me. If you've not read it already, you need to read it, you need to buy it, obviously, get it signed. There's a quote very near to the start where you say, "There had rarely been a day when I hadn't witnessed man's inhumanity to man." And make no mistakes, this is a hard read, and it is relentless. And I think that is what makes it so important, because we're in a world of sound bites, off the news. You get 2 seconds of that terrible thing that's happening in Greece, and you go, "Oh, I can't do that, I need to move on." And that, unfortunately, is the world that we live in. And yeah, that's the way of protecting yourself from trauma. But also, I think this is why this book is so important, because he just takes you with it, and it is really, really amazing writing, and it's an amazing story. And just thank you for persisting and getting it down there. But I'm going to take you right back to your childhood to begin with,
Okay.
to do it chronologically. There's another great quote here which says, "It was as wonderfully simple and rural a life as you could possibly imagine." So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Firstly, thanks for having us, and it's good to be here. I grew up in eastern Afghanistan, a place called Nangarhar. I lived with my grandparents in the mountains. We had a very simple nomadic life, and it was great. I really enjoyed. From age 4 or so, 5, I lived with them. In summer, we would stay in the mountains. We had animals, we had goats. I used to say sheep, and someone told me there's no S in sheep, so English is a fine language. I'm still learning, although I have a master's degree and I was sent to college, which is another story. Yeah, it was wonderful. I really enjoyed being with my grandparents, and we had a very, I've learned a lot of things from them in terms of our culture, our heritage, our background, and I didn't actually spend much time with my own parents. My father was a doctor, he was very busy. My mother was a housewife / a midwife. So yeah, that experience of being in the mountains, and it was very peaceful. It was very experiencing a lot of tranquility. And then sadly, when I started school, things changed because of the war and the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001. And so yeah, for about 2-3 years I lived with them, and we will travel. We had a very nomadic life. We had horses, camels, and it was great. And I was drinking a lot of milk, eating a lot of proper butter, like a lot of organic things, and I was a healthy child. Somehow became quite unhealthy in this year, but again, so yeah, life was good. I think I have experienced things that perhaps things was like that in the UK maybe 100 or 200 years ago. So I kind of live in a parallel world as a child. So I had a good childhood. Yeah.
I wondered whether there's a lovely bit where you explain being a small shepherd, and how solitary it was when you were doing that. I wondered whether some of the things that you learnt being on your own for long periods of time, and the resilience for a child, your average child in the UK today would not be great on a hillside with lots of sheep. And I just wondered whether that you maybe took that with you on your journey, whether there were times when you could look to the past when you were on your own.
Perhaps somewhat. I mean, I wasn't really on my own. I was with my granddad and all the sheep and goats. I really loved them. I had 9 for all of them. It was great. Yes, I think the experience I had in the mountains had really helped me to overcome this very challenging journey, physically as well as mentally. So, there was an occasion where I was jumping from a moving train, was able to balance myself. I was like, I could do this. But some crazy stuff. But yeah, definitely crossing the borders, for example, between Iran and Turkey, in a lot of other places where it was very mountainous, very difficult terrains. So the mountains experience was very positive. And also, along the way, I met a lot of shepherds, and some of our guides in Turkey, for example, a lot of them were shepherds. So they were like their second business hustle or side hustle was helping smugglers and helping people move on, which was quite creative. I mean, we hear a lot about smuggling, which I'm sure we'll come to, but these guys were basically shepherds and farmers, and were helping or supporting or taking some money for moving people on as well. So, and I felt like on the journey, I realized these traffickers or these smugglers, mainly, they were the shepherds and we were the sheep, and we just followed their orders without questioning it or understanding the situation and circumstances that we were in.
I mean, going back to getting you to that point, obviously there was a horrible tragedy in your family when your dad was killed, which can't even begin to get my head around, because trauma for a child, seeing that and hearing about it and seeing the impact that it had, not just on you personally, but on then your circumstances as the family, and particularly on your mum. But what really jumps out at me, not just the fact that you were little, and I've got a boy who isn't much older than you were when all this began, is the fact that you were then between a rock and a hard place as a family, because you had not only had the US Army situation, looking at what your family were doing, and obviously with your dad being tragically killed, but also you then had the Taliban putting the pressure on you as a small child to get involved further. And I just wondered if you could maybe explain that for people that haven't read the book, what it was like.
Read the book.
Read the book.
It's very, indeed, it was very complicated. And again, writing this book was very hard because there's a lot of things I want to forget and move on from. And to constantly write about it and speak about it, it's difficult. I think it's important because you hear so much misinformation or things in the media, just like I said, 2 minutes. So everyone is kind of brushed with the same brush. The situation is very complex. And for me, it was important to explain that refugees or myself, we have life before we become refugees. It's not a choice that we make. It's out of circumstances and events which are out of our control. So losing loved ones and being in a situation where you're being pursued by the enemy and you're pursued by the side supposedly helping you, but either way, you can't win. So I was very keen on actually joining the Taliban. Perhaps if I didn't, if I survived, I would have a really important job in their current government. But I'm glad I didn't. I mean, my mother, and particularly my grandmother, pursued this idea that violence wasn't the answer. Growing up as an Afghan, it was very important, taking revenge, fighting for the country. I hear some of the events I've done. People say, "Oh, you're a traitor. You shouldn't have come. You should have fought for your country." I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I wanted to do," but people didn't let me do that, thankfully. So the complexity of, you see millions of Afghans fleeing. Afghans been refugees in Pakistan for the last 5 years. Actually, my grandfather was a refugee in Peshawar. My father became a doctor in Peshawar. And so I'm a third, fourth generation refugee in that sense, which I haven't really thought about until recently. And so, the situation we were faced with as a child, I was 10, 11 or younger, and my brother Hazrat, we were trying to play the game and trying to, support our families in the best we can. And it wasn't a decision that I wanted to take to come to Europe or to leave Afghanistan. I felt my family needed me and I needed to be there. And so my childhood was very different to the children in the UK. So when I go to school and I talk to I have nieces and nephews, they're 10, 12, 13. And you ask them to bring you water, they struggle to bring you water. But we had to literally run the house and manage complex negotiations with the Taliban, with the Afghan intelligence people. And so the thing that saddens me now is that if the US and Britain was handing, or the West in total, were handing Afghanistan over to the Taliban the way they did in 2021, abandoning and betraying Afghans in Afghanistan, I wish they'd done that in 2003 and 4. My loved one would still be alive, and the loved ones of 150,000 people would still be alive. We lost 75,000 soldiers in the war. For what? And also, I'm sure we'll discuss it, but girls were able to go to school, become women were becoming journalists, academics. Basically, they had aspirations. Now everything is stopped. So these guys were given hopes and dreams, and they were out and about making a difference and having an impact. And suddenly they put back in a cage. So it's like a bird. You free a bird, and then you put it back in a cage. So it's just what has happened should not have happened. It was preventable. It was avoidable. If the US played the game differently. I mean, of course, I didn't want the US to be in Afghanistan. I've explained that in the book. Most Afghans were against the idea of the invasion of occupation of my country. I mean, my country became a war zone as a result, but that didn't help. So 20 years later, they were like, "Oh, we are there for Afghan women, we are there for this and that." And 20 years later, suddenly, they're not interested in the Afghan women. They're not interested in what they were saying. They were there for spending billions and trillions. Just a final point, there was a conference at the UN last year wanting to raise £5 billion to support families and children, where 10 million people were experiencing famine and 28 million people needed food. The world pledged only 2.5 billion. And then a week later, there was a conference for Ukraine. They were able to raise 10 billion, which was good. I mean, I'm really happy for the Ukrainians. They're going through a terrible situation. I understand what it means to live in a war zone. But the West was actually spending that kind of money a week on war, but they're not able to spend that money a year to save lives. And this is where we are.
And a lot of that is down, as you said, to the media, the way that the media carves off the Middle East or Southeast Asia from Europe, and we all subconsciously buy into that, and we think differently about this group of people and differently about that group of people. And I think that's why, again, I'll say this many times during the next hour, this is why this is so important, your story, because you know, I'm sure you could write an entire book about the situation that was going on when you were 12, but you put it together really well. For somebody like me who doesn't understand the complexities of what has gone on, I can see exactly the impact that had on one little family out of entire
And to be
nation.
fair, it was done by Nadine Gori, who is a wonderful writer. She helped me put my words on paper. Otherwise,
I will ask you about the writing process.
yeah, I will be
later,
drunk.
because
I will be saying I went there, I went here, I did this, I did that. It would be
Yeah.
boring. But she really helped me. She really asked me questions, which I felt very, very uncomfortable about. But it was important.
Yes, yeah,
So,
yeah, to power you on through that. So your co-writer is an extremely well-known journalist. Yeah, so it is great sort of to have her input into that and to get your story out of you, because we all need that, don't we? I think, and if you do go on to have a writing residence here, hopefully that's what that role will be, which is to draw people's stories out of them. I mean, the poems was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed listening to that. So I think that's the beginning of this process of gathering people's collective experiences and kind of mirroring what you've done. So just to top back to one of the things chronologically, that the next thing that jumped out at me and I really enjoyed reading about was how your perceptions towards women in society have changed. So obviously you were brought up in a very patriarchal society.
a long way.
I thought it was great. I mean, you were really honest about it. I really, really appreciated that because I've also found, you know, recently with Afghanistan, immediately everybody sort of hooks onto a certain issue and they sort of you know, banging the drum about this particular issue with regards to women. And again, it is complicated, isn't it? You know, with any culture, the different roles within a society, within a religion, if you like. But I really appreciate the fact that the little examples that you gave, how you were commanding women, much older women than you were, and telling them what to do. And again, that's something that doesn't come naturally to a boy, is it? It's something that you inherit from your elders and from society around you, and you can see shades of it in British society as well, sadly. But I really appreciated that, and you also tracked on your journey as well. You didn't meet anywhere near as many women and girls as you did, obviously, men on the journey, but I could see throughout it that you were going, oh, hang on a minute, it's different here, and kind of who am I to judge that, even though I feel strange about this? It is different in this country, and these people are wrong to treat women in that way. So I don't know if you sort of feel you've sort of been on a massive journey with that, you know, with yourself, obviously now married and have a daughter as well.
It's a difficult question, or interesting observation. So, yes, I mean, growing up in Afghanistan, definitely society impacts your, you know, you are the product of society. And so, yes, I had strange views or strange being bossing around women and my mother and my aunties. And then I came to write the book, and it was like, you know, my writer was a woman, my editor, the publisher, the publicist, everyone. I was surrounded by these wonderful women who really helped me, you know, get my story out there. So, yeah, I've learned. I have come a long way, and I think I was quite ignorant. And also, I mean, you know, to be fair, I was a child, and I've learned along the way. And I think, you know, even things growing up in Afghanistan, things were very black and white, which isn't the case. Like, oh, you guys are the infidel, we're the good people. You know? It's not how it works. So, you know, women's roles are very different. So, you know, through education, through cultural exchanges, through the journey, it has made me going from a boy to an adult, not just in a physical sense, but also in terms of my understanding of the world, in terms of the, you know, when I go to the UK, there was one thing that the social services did not believe my age was, because I had to mature, I had to grow faster to survive, and I had to learn things quickly. So definitely, yeah, that was a very eye-opening experience, and I think sometimes we judge people based on whatever they believe is through religion and culture. But I think, you know, people changes. I still have certain of my principles. You know, I haven't given it up all the way. But I think, you know, now being married, having a daughter, and how that feels. I mean, you know, thinking about if she was born in Afghanistan, what she had, the opportunity that she had here. And so when I do school talks, and especially like women's here, those of you who have jobs and work and have the freedom to do whatever you want to do, that is not available to Afghans or Afghan women and Afghan girls. You know, I had cousins who my uncle sadly passed away a few years ago, and his wish was for his daughters to become, you know, doctors and teachers and midwives and whatnot. And they all finished their 12th year, and they finished their university entry exams and so on. And the Taliban came, and so we had no choice but marry them off. Like, you know, so they were married age, and they couldn't continue their education. And so it's quite heartbreaking. And this idea that we are in a situation where the Taliban wants you to take your mother or your female member to a doctor, a female doctor. They want, if your daughter go to school, so they have a school till year 6, a primary school, they expect the teacher to be a female. But they do not allow females to become teachers. They do not allow females to become doctors. So it's a very strange catch-22 situation where they want you not to take your female patients to a male doctor, but then there is no work being done in terms of education. The universities have been closed to women and girls, and schools have been closed. So it's like, yeah, I'm like, what are they thinking?
Yeah.
So, but again, one of the things that really influenced me, my grandmother, who I spent a lot of time with, she was a midwife, and as well as being in the mountain with her, she influenced me greatly. I mean, the book starts with her. So there's been a lot of strong women in my life, and there's nothing to be afraid of. So I mean, I've learned to compromise and learn to let go of some of my prejudices and some of my really ignorant views and things. I think through educational exchanges, through cultural exchanges, and through the journey and experience that I've been on, and it continues.
Yeah, it's very evident that you. I did appreciate your honesty, and the other bit that jumped out at me personally, because we're involved with the Huddersfield Town Sanctuary. One Christmas Day, our entire family decided to do the Christmas meal there, and my husband was doing the food, and he really enjoyed it because so many of the guys coming up to get served were horrified that a man was cooking, and they kept expecting to see a woman, and he really enjoyed that because he just had challenging preconceptions here about it. It's okay for a man to be cooking, and you were doing exactly the same thing, weren't you? Because you said you didn't know how to cook, and you had to learn to throw a very simple meal together. But moving on to the actual journey itself now. I think that the theme that runs throughout, and it is just, I can't even begin to tell you how disturbing it is to read, that the fact that you were a commodity and everybody was a commodity. And I think, just the word slavery, it's bandied about a lot. But when we look at the pictures and the images of people trying to get into the UK, for example, it is just, people are not seen as commodities, and I think that is exactly the way that you painted it here. And it's the agents, it's these middlemen that throughout you. There's a great extract here that I just want to quickly read, so you can sum it up really well. One of the strangest things about this journey was how whenever a smuggler or a driver gave us an instruction, we simply followed it. Whether it was get in the car, stay silent, follow me, eat this, shave your beard, hand over your passport, we simply followed orders. Without questioning or really even thinking, we put our lives into the hands of strangers time and again. We had no choice. When they said come, we little lost sheep had to follow. It's very hard to explain the feeling of repeatedly putting your complete trust in the hands of strangers who see you as a commodity. Every time I did, as one of these men asked, I had an acute awareness that this could be the last instruction I would ever follow. Each of these men had the power to take us to our deaths at any time. I just don't know how you did that from day to day.
I mean, in the beginning, I had no understanding of how the whole system worked, the structure worked, and then the more I came to realize, the more shocking it was. And these guys, some of them were nice people, actually. Some of them were nice people, and they did treat us well, but most of them were in it for money, and they were treating us as a commodity. And the sad reality was the authorities were treating us as criminals, and we were constantly afraid of the authorities. So if we had a way where we could actually go to the authorities to seek help and support, that was not available because we were more afraid of the authorities than the smugglers. And again, we'll come to, I mean, the smugglers were bad, but then when I go to the UK, the official that I was dealing with was perhaps as worse. At least the smugglers were not challenging the essence of my identity and my age and so on. But yeah, when you're in a situation where you have no choice or little choice, you got to do what you got to do. And I think you just realize, you just hope that things will work out. And there was a lot of occasions where they put us in great danger. They put us in a boat, for example, which I'm sure we'll come to. Literally hundreds of people in a boat for 20, 30 people. They sent us on journeys where it was physically unpractical, and let alone emotionally. So, and they would constantly lie to us and put us in a situation where we were very unstable mentally, and so a lot of the time they were very careless. I mean, they could keep us in a chicken coop for a week. They could. I mean, there were occasions where they could keep us in a normal place, give us normal food, or we were treated as a human being. But most occasions, some of the smugglers were pretty horrible. So And yeah, that was a good summary and explanation how we felt. And again, the smugglers exist. I mean, they're evil. I'm here. I'm alive speaking to you because of them. But if I've lost my life, I've lost my life. It's, we saw the tragic incident the other day in the Greek waters, where people have lost their lives. And again, I mean, I'm not so angry with the smuggler as such. But I'm angry with the authorities' response to it and how the Greek authorities knew about it, but did not respond to rescue people.
They've completely taken the power of choice in life, which is the one thing that makes us human beings. I think it is that we are given options, and you've only got one option, which is to go on and go on and go on and hope and hope and hope day after day after day. Just you're at the mercy of these people, and that trusting some of the worst people that humanity has unfortunately produced. And again, you had no choice in that. So, and I think the mental trauma in particular is, we all kind of know, I know I'm going to leave this building, I'll probably go here, then I'll go there, then I'll do that. You no idea.
That was the frustrating bit, Nobody told us, so for example, this morning or yesterday I set up from Kettering and I was going to Bradford, or then I'm going to go visit my brother in Bolton, I'm going to hopefully come here, then I'm going to Shrewsbury or whatever. Like, there was no planning involved. We just didn't know. Sometimes we would be stuck in a place for days. Nobody told us a thing. Sometimes we would be just basically in a flying field in a valley, or something would be in a basement or whatever. Or sometimes we would be just in the back of a truck, or sometimes we would be just walking every night without knowing how long we're going to walk, where we are, where exactly we are going. So that was and then because I was deported a lot of the time back and forth, that's why it took me a year. It was 12,000 miles, and so the second time, knowing how hard it was the first time, so I wish I didn't knew. So it's like the first time was frustrating, not knowing, but then the second time when I had an idea of how difficult it was, I wish I didn't knew, because then it was more hard in that sense. So it's like, but I think it would have been helpful if they give us some sort of like an itinerary or some sort of information of saying, where we will be and how, approximately how long it will take us and what the plan is.
Just the mental, we're smiling about it, but yeah, the mental torture of not knowing what might happen in the next hour, but also the people that you was very interesting for me, particularly. You've obviously got the smugglers and the agents, that you were saying that the worst cruelty and the biggest fear came from those beneath them in the pecking order who'd already been paid. So the agents, obviously, you were. I mean, do you want to explain how that process works with the money? Because I was quite interested.
So basically, it's basically a business, and it's like there's the directors, there's the chief executives, there's the country representatives, there are the guides, then the drivers, the facilitators, and so on. Money, your family keep money with a third party, and then as long as you cross borders or whatever the smugglers would say, and then the money is kind of moved on from the third party to the smugglers, and there's this big guy in Kabul or Peshawar or somewhere. And then these other guys are working for him. So, and there were occasions where we would be kidnapped because the smuggler hadn't paid money. I'm like, really? You're going to kidnap us? Like, you're going to kidnap us? Because somebody had not paid you money? So it was just a very shady and a bit crazy experience. And and sadly there's also stories of people being kidnapped, Afghans being taken for ransom when they deported from Turkey to Iran, and sadly tortured, and it's heartbreaking how people are treated by their fellow human beings and taken advantage of their suffering and their pain. But it was very strange and interesting at the same time. But at the time when we were traveling, I wasn't really interested in knowing how things worked. I just wanted to be safe and want to get somewhere, get a shelter, get some food, and just hope these guys will take care of us. I mean, it's in their interest to make sure it's about their reputation. They want to do the right thing as far as possible. But then there's these guys who couldn't care less. There's these guys who would take us from place to place or would meet us in the mountains somewhere. I think there's very little authority by the representatives or whomever over them. So there were some guys who were just completely trusting them, and I said they could have done anything to us and put us in all sorts of situations. So it was a mixture of. I mean, I remember meeting a smuggler, staying with a guy with a family on the Iran-Turkey border the first time. A really nice family, and I said to him, "You're a smuggler," and he was like, "You're insulting me. I'm not a smuggler. I'm a business person. I'm merely facilitating your passage." And he did treat us well. His family treated us well. And, so, but there were other occasions where they were not very kind. So.
And obviously as a 12-year-old, as you were when the journey began, even more frightening, because you're looking to the adults and the world to look after you, and they're not. So it felt like very much the friends that you developed on the way kind of became your big brothers.
Friends was a big support. So because I was supposed to be with my brother and then we were separated, so I was keep looking for him. But the friends that I met along the way, my travel companions, my fellow Afghans and refugees, they really took me in as a brother, as a friend, and helped me, push me on, physically and emotionally. But also I was taking full advantage of my childhood as well. And, there were occasions where I would act innocent and people would feel sorry for me. And then I made the most of that as well. So it was like
as anybody would in that situation, I think.
so we were at this place, the chicken coop place, a place called Van in Turkey, and so this guy was always drunk, and he used to give us one chicken for $5, and then he used to take us to the bathroom into the house once a day, because we as Muslims we want to do ablution, we want to wash ourselves and pray. So it was very, and the way we were sleeping in this chicken coop, we were sleeping cross-legged because it was too small. It was like a small space, so it was the 11 of us, 6 people on the other side, 5 people on this side, so trying to manage it. And then so I went inside, and the lady looked at me, this old lady, the mother of this guy, and she told him he's not going out to that place. And I realized what was going on, so I pushed it a bit more, and like, and then she kept me in the house, and so the guys were then angry with me. They were basically being saying, why are you inside? And I was releasing waters to them 5-6 times a day in a pipe from the bathroom. There's a pipe from the bathroom, so that they could wash themselves. They could pray, and they could be clean. But that was a good experience. They were like, we want to leave this place. I was like, I'm fine. I was inside with this old lady. She fed me well, and so they were like, oh, it's not about you, it's about us. And so it was an interesting experience being able to use my innocence and my child nature. And this old woman was lovely, and she really took care of me. So there were occasions.
There were occasional people along the way that did really help. Gave you a little bit more hope. I think the hard bit as well reading is the separation from your brother, because I just can't imagine, what it must have felt like when you were meant to be together. And your mum basically, you had no choice. Your mother told you were going for your own good, for the family's good, and then almost immediately, very soon on, got separated. Which was at the airport, wasn't it?
Yes, I was very angry and really upset, and I was hoping I'll see him, but then looking in hindsight, 16 years later, I'm really glad the smugglers separated us, because I don't know if I explained this in the book, but so when we were separated, that gave me a determination to find him. There were a lot of times I would have given up, and if we were together, I think we would have found it hard to go through pain and suffering together, or perhaps I would have relied upon him too much. And there were occasions I was separated from my closest travel companions. For example, being fitted to the seals of the train to go to Bulgaria, or being on the top of a lorry engine, space for one person. So maybe I would help him back, or he would have helped me back. So things happen for a reason in life. And sometimes when terrible things happen to us, we think, oh, this is bad, which is bad at the time. But then you look back upon it, that was a very good thing. So the smugglers, perhaps unknowingly, done me a big favor that I didn't give up. I mean, I had faith and hope that I'll make it somewhere safe, and then the determination to find him really kicked in, that I need to go and find my brother. So whenever I was deported, when I was going to be sent to Afghanistan, I thought I can't go back home because I have to go and find my brother. I need to find him. And again, that's one of the reasons why I came to the UK, because he was supposedly here. And also, when people say to me, why the UK? I say, why not the UK? And also, I was unwelcome across half of the world except Italy. So yeah, my brother being separated from me at the time was a very sad thing. We were, my mom said, hold on to each other's hands, and be with each other, and no matter how bad it gets, don't come back. And so then to be separated from him, and then the smugglers to have lied to me, that stayed with me for a long time. I was basically very pissed off with the smugglers, but it was what it was. But looking back at it, I think it was a good decision, because I think going through this journey together would have been hard.
I think you're right, and that's a really interesting perspective. I think if you are close to your sibling, to see them suffer in any way is another torture, on top of the tortures that you've already got. And one of you would have been suffering more than the other, probably. And if it wasn't him, worried about you would be concerned about him. And not to mention the physical stuff, like getting thrown off the train when you had all this jump and hurt yourself and nobody cared. I mean, that was a bit that really, as a mother, that was a bit when you hurt yourself and nobody even looked after you. Just jumped off a train. It was just unbearable to read that sometimes. But the other interesting bit was when you went through these horrendous journeys. The truck, when you were talking about the trucks and you're breaking into trucks, and when you do get into places, you also manage to escape a few times. So I was really interested in that as a young person. It's a very young person escaping from the immigration centre and then from the children's home, and you just wanted to keep running by the sounds of it.
So I think you when you're on this journey and this experience where you have nothing to lose,
Yeah.
and you just become street smart. You just learn to deal with situations where I remember when we were deported from Turkey to Iran, there was a guy who managed to escape, and they found him within hours and sadly really beat him and tortured him. So I knew the consequences of running. And when the Iranian border guards or the police were transporting us across Iran, they said to us, don't even think about running because we have a responsibility to take you from one end to the other. And if if you do anything stupid, then you will have consequences. And so I just give it a try, and I was succeeded with one of my crazy friends because every time I try to discuss it with the guys, they're like, "Don't talk to us because you're not going to be able to run. If you do, we will be basically in trouble because of you. So don't even tell us that you're going to do this."
Yeah.
So that's how serious it was. And so and then running from a children's home was easier than running from a police prison bus. But and I kind of felt bad about the children running from the children's home because they were doing their best to help and support me for the first time on this journey in Italy, where they was there for 2 weeks. The people were incredibly kind and compassionate, and I hope to go back and find them. I never thought I'd write a book, and the book will be published in 7 languages, including Italiano, and their names are in the book, but I forgot the town's name. It was near Bari in southern Italy. So I hope to go back and find these people somehow and thank them, and I'm really grateful to them because they really went beyond. They did a lot of extra things for me to make me feel welcome, make me feel settled. But they didn't understand my situation that I had to get to England to find my brother. So Italy was, and it was strange that I was safe and secure. That for the first time I didn't have to run for shelter. I didn't have to worry about food, and I didn't have to run from the police. And so it was because that was my life for like 10 months or 9 months. And so suddenly to be treated as a child and as a human being was a bit abnormal.
Yeah, must be. I mean, it comes across, you've been quite evident about how grateful you were too at the time. So that bit of kindness. And I think that the other thing that I found quite interesting was you were obviously born into a faith. You're born Muslim. You're obviously born into that faith, and there was a certain system surrounding it in the country that you lived at the time, the country of birth. But it seems to have changed slightly as you went through this process, and I found that really interesting that you still had your faith, and you almost kind of made it yours, if that makes sense. In a way, it was almost like, this is who I am and where I'm from, and now it's become more internalised rather than what's kind of been imposed. I don't mean imposed, but I mean, you know what I mean? It almost sprang up as a result of the horror that you were
That's a
going
good point, because like growing up, everybody's Muslim, everybody goes to the mosque, you study the Quran, but it's like you don't make an effort to understand things and reflect on things in the way that you should. So on the journey, I had a lot of free time, and I needed to seek help from a greater being, because we were in a situation where, again, with the smugglers and the authorities and everything else. So I was able to connect to God in a way that I was never able to before. So that really helped, and I still try to do my best. And I've actually learned Islam, and not so much on the journey, but when I go to the UK. I used to pray 5 times a day. I didn't know what I was praying, what I was saying.
Yeah.
Reading the Quran, I had never, the imams, the mosque never made an effort to translate it for us. It was whatever the mullahs told us, we just believed them. So there's a lot of the people who right now, the people who are governing Afghanistan are, some of them, they will give their life for Islam, but will not make an effort to understand Islam. So I've learned Islam in the UK.
You educated yourself, didn't you?
Yes.
Basically, you were kind of given the tools, and you kind of learned how to do it yourself. And I found it quite interesting as well when you said when you met people of other faiths, and it was obviously the first time in your life where you thought, oh, here's somebody that follows this faith, and here's somebody that follows that faith. And isn't that interesting, rather than you're wrong and I'm right? And
Sure, and that would have been my first impression, especially when I arrived in Iran. There was like the Shia Muslims, which we were told they were the unbelievers or disbelievers or the infidels as well. So you find out and you see it for yourself. They're basically Muslims, and they're just praying in a different way, and it was really really touching. And same when I go to the UK, and I've become very interested in studying religion. So I did my GCSE in religious study. It was quite strange learning about all sorts of things, but Christianity, Judaism, and other religion. I did my philosophy and ethics at college as well. So I'm and meeting people of different faiths really it has helped me understand my own faith. So meeting people of other faith not only helped me understand their faith, but helped me to understand my faith better.
really evident that we do. I think I'd probably like to ask you to maybe talk a little bit, if you're okay with this, about the impact that the entire journey and what happened to you had on you mentally, because you must be a very resilient person to have come from that and to do what you're doing today. And I will credit your parents for that, because I think it's important to credit your parents, and you obviously had your parents and your mum.
Even my grandparents.
Yeah, oh, of course, your grandparents, yeah. Especially your grandma. She made me laugh, so she did. So I think you obviously had a very, very strong sense of self there. But there are times that you are, I mean, there's a quote here where it says, "Life only has value if it is worth living. I was no longer sure. I was becoming detached from my surroundings." So I suppose my next question is, what brought you back from that brink? Because you were brought back, like physically, weren't you? Because you had a terrible time, but you slowly, obviously, became the man that you are today from the pits of unimaginable despair.
I think certainly faith has helped, realizing that this life I had was a gift. I have no rights over, I can't just take my life, I want to take it. It's like, I'm here, I have a test, and I have to basically somehow battle it out. I mean, I didn't lose hope on the journey. I lost hope when I was in the UK. I thought there was no point to life because of the way the bureaucracy and the officials were treating me, disputing my age and my nationality, keeping me in a limbo for years. So that really destroyed me inside. It really, and sadly, as we speak, we have laws and legislation which is very hostile. When I go to the UK, I was criminalized. I was penalized for coming here. It was just a culture, kind of a policy of disbelief, but now it's the law of the land. So anybody who arrives, my friend Shafiq was here earlier, he arrived recently, he was in prison for 12 months for illegal entry. Even though it's not illegal to claim asylum, but the UK now have laws, if you come here irregularly, you will be in prison. And the government have plans through this illegal migration bill where they will ban asylum completely for people who come here irregularly. And we have the Nationalities and Borders Act last year or the year before, where it creates the good and bad refugees narrative. So if you come here through resettlement, you're a good refugee, although resettlement is a very, very small percentage of people who comes. And so the UK have this British exceptionalism idea, or the government has, because the people has been very different. I travel across the UK, I've been to 400,000-500,000 cities, and people are very kind and welcoming. But honestly, I have never seen it this bad. We're living in a very unprecedented time where the government is going after refugees. Not after refugees, just that being a refugee, you are criminalized, but even compassionate being criminalized. I mean, people have been persecuted for helping refugees in France, in Italy, in Greece. There were some people who saved lives in Greece. You know that film, The Swimmers? One of the girls' sister, Sarah Mardani, and some other guys, Sean and a few other activists, were saving lives in the Greek islands, Lesbos or Chios, and they were persecuted for espionage charges, for smuggling charges, for terrorism charges. They're still going through the court system. And in the UK, there were the Stansted 11 who were persecuted for starting a flight from Stansted taking asylum seekers, deporting asylum seekers. So, in France, there was a farmer who helped people over the Alps and give them food and clothes in winter, and he was persecuted for doing so. So we're at a crossroad where, the UK government, the European governments, so people literally drowning. And 27 people who drowned in the English Channel. There's some survivors. They said, we called the British, they said it was called the French. We called the French told us to call the British. You were in the British water, you were in the English water, you were in the French water. Nobody made an effort to go and save lives. So because of the rhetoric the politicians in media has been using in dehumanizing refugees and asylum seekers, in making us feel, what is the word? We don't like, it's just numbers and statistics, there's a word I can't remember, but it's just making us feel we need to care about people who suffer for our fellow human beings. So going through this experience and this journey, and I think this idea of being resilient, I don't like the word resilient, because sometimes what happens is, it's a very good word, it's a positive word, but this idea that whatever you're going through, you overcome it, you're resilient. I'd rather not be resilient. I'd rather have the knowing that, it's okay to be vulnerable, that people will support you. And I think, when you have, like, for example, I did my degree in my studies, I was resilient, staying awake, a librarian, working hard and being dedicated and so on. That was a choice. I wanted to be, stay focused and resilient. But on this journey, I didn't have much of a choice.
Yeah.
And so when refugees go through situations, sometimes people say with good intention, like, oh, you've been resilient, but like, I'd rather not be. I was forced to be resilient. I was forced to be brave. Exactly. Yeah. So, I want to live in a world where it's okay not to be resilient and still think that people will care for you. People will support you. So,
and that's almost, you put that so well. It's almost like that's being taken away from it, isn't it? Even the thing that hopefully we would all do. We go outside, somebody's in trouble, we give them a helping hand. We're not allowed to, because it will be illegal to do that, and we will get prosecuted. And to me, that's wicked. There's no other word for it.
So in the law, in the legislation, before it used to be like, if you do it for something gainful, if you get money from it, that's like kind of acting against the law and it's unlawful, which makes sense if you're helping an asylum seeker and expecting money or something from it. But now, even if the NLRI, the Royal Life Board people were basically they were going to be persecuted, and then there was a big thing against the legislation. They said, "Oh, there's an exemption for you guys. You know, you going out in the scene saving like this." Basically this what the government or the bell was saying, the law was saying is that it's okay for people to drown. If you go and help them, we will prosecute you. Because you hear this like there's the Life Board people at the taxi service for these refugees. What they're saying is it's okay for people to drown. You shouldn't be saving them. That's ultimately what they're saying.
And it doesn't matter whether you have a faith or not, that is what makes us human, which is helping other people.
Exactly. And the Life Board people say, look, we don't care, we don't ask people their nationalities and their passports and their visas or whatnot. If people are in distress, we'll go and save them.
Yeah.
You do whatever you want to do, we'll continue doing what we are doing.
I think the bit that really resonated with me was when you, as a child, you met with figures of authority in England treating you like you're the scum of the earth. They don't even believe you. I've got two nephews when they were 14 who looked like big full beards, and they were huge. And if they had been in your situation, they're half Pakistani, but if they'd been in your situation, they would have had the same thing. Sure. And I think it's easy for me to be able to connect with what you went through in a way, but to be then faced, from Britain as somebody who's proud to be British sometimes, that the people that were meant to be safeguarding you and looking after you as a child, it's almost like a last slap in the face on a horrific journey.
So the system we have, I think it wasn't really the issue with people as such, it was the system, it still is. So the people sitting around a table in Folkestone doing my age assessment, telling me that I'm not 13, I couldn't be 13, I couldn't have traveled half of the world, giving me they didn't even have the courtesy to say, I was born on the 11th of October. They didn't even say, okay, we'll accept the 11th of October, but give you a different date of birth, a different day, a different year. They give me a complete different date of birth, 1st of May for some reason. And I was like, okay, cool. And now I look at the paper, they spelled my name wrong, they spelled my date of birth wrong, even though they had my Home Office identification card in front of them. Such a careless process. But now, the last 16 years I've been here, there's been so many stories, particularly Afghans being age disputed. I mean, we grew up in a very different environment. We look old. I still look old. And again, sometimes that's the environment that we grew up in, and we were adult before our age, or we had to grow up faster to survive, which I mentioned. So there was very little understanding towards that. And I think it was politically motivated. So people are age disputed, so then the local authority doesn't have to care for you put you in a foster placement or in a care home or give you the right as a child in the Home Office doesn't have to grant you status based on your age. Right now in Kent, almost half of Afghans are age disputed, and there's nothing they could do about it. And now the Home Office with this new legislation gonna remove the local authority completely from the process and do their own age assessment. They will have their own social workers unit at the Home Office. And there is this assumption that asylum seekers who arrive here unaccompanied minors, they are lying. So therefore, they're not children. And so then you start a process where everyone is seen as a suspect, as a liar. And that's what I had to deal with. And so it's a lot worse than what it was when I arrived. So now we're at a stage where they're putting children in hotels instead of the local authority being responsible. There was a court case in Brighton, which the local authority won, that the children are the responsibility of the local authority, not the Home Office. The Home Office should not be putting unaccompanied minors in hotels. But the Home Office have this idea that these guys are not really unaccompanied minors. They're saying they're 16, 15, but they're actually 20, they're 25. Yeah. And people have been sent letters, and if I wasn't able to fight them, I would not be sitting here. They were, the Home Office didn't believe I was from Afghanistan, but they were reporting me to Afghanistan, I assume, but they were threatening to report me twice. The age dispute situation, it was resolved. It took me 2 years. I was missed. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't go to college. It just impacted my life so much, and my legal status and everything else. I was kept in limbo. So it's just there's so many Afghans, particularly Afghans, who are age disputed. And sometimes we don't have the documentations. It's our word against their words. You're presumed guilty. You have to prove yourself innocent, and it's very difficult to do that against the powerful forces of local authority, or particularly the Home Office, because usually it's the Home Office who says that age assessment needs to be done. There was a short story. There was a young man I was helping. He was living in Newham. I went to Denmark for 4 days to visit my in-laws. Ended up there for 4 months because of COVID restriction came in. And this guy was happy living in Newham, going to the mosque, playing cricket, starting school in September, was doing all sorts of good stuff and making friends, registered with the doctor. Everything was cool. And then suddenly the Home Office sent him a letter saying, you look over 25, and the local authority needs to do an age assessment. And then the local authority did an age assessment in March of 2020. And the 13th or 14th of March, he was made to be over 18. get rid of him, make him Home Office problem. The Home Office then took him to Whitfield. From there, he was dispersed to Middlesbrough. He had 3 months to. This was during COVID, basically, when the restriction was about to come in. And so this guy I was speaking to him, he's like, look, I'm gonna, he was basically suicidal. He wanted to run away. I was like, no, don't do anything stupid. Just wait until I come. I'm trying to get help through the Refugee Council, there's a charity called Social Workers Without Borders, do some really good work. But it was COVID, so everything was restricted. And this guy was sent to one of the most deprived areas in the country, where he would call me saying, look, even it's COVID, but people are doing drugs outside, people are drinking. He was living with adult asylum seekers. Until I came back 4 months later, I visited him, and I was heartbroken to see his situation. And I called Newham, this is a safeguarding issue. They were like, well, he doesn't live here. I said, well, you made him somebody else's problem. That's why he doesn't live there. And then I tried to get Middlesbrough to do age assessment. We found him a good lawyer. Newham was like, he should have challenged the decision within 3 months. I said, he's a kid. It was during COVID. And so Middlesbrough thankfully accepted his age to be 15 and a half. Did the age assessment. I managed to get his Afghan ID and so on. And then he went to school. He was fostered. Now he's doing really well. He got his legal status. He was actually fostered by his teacher. The teacher was really saw his situation that was pretty bad and took him in and supported him through the process. But there's just so many people like this young man. Once your age is period, you don't know how to navigate the process, and that destroys your chances of life in terms of education, opportunities. And so it's a serious issue. But now with this new legislation, the last year legislation, the Home Office could basically age dispute you. There's no way you can challenge it. The decision is final. You could challenge it through judicial review, which is very complicated. And now the Home Office wants to bring in scientific evidence. They want to do X-rays. They want to use science to determine people's ages. So it's again very unethical. But again, this whole thing starts with you're not telling the truth.
As it does with other issues. I mean, the other issue I'm thinking of is homeless. You speak to somebody who's out seen a homeless person. Some people immediately will say, "Oh, well, they make 50 quid an hour," and because this is the knee-jerk reaction that we're fed largely by the media and by not having particularly good ethics in society. So, it's something that we need to tackle. Is there anything that you could say to people here today, if there was something that they could do to help support what you're just saying, to challenge the legislation?
Yeah, you've got to challenge it. The Home Office, the Home Office usually, expect social workers to be border guards. You're not border guards. Or expect health officials to act as border guards. So the Home Office needs to do its job, and the local authorities to do its job. The children are the sole, and the Children Commissioner has said this, the children are the sole responsibility of the local authority. And also, with this legislation of sending people to Rwanda, they're saying children are not technically safe because as soon as they turn 17 and have been 18, we still deport them. So, you're putting children's lives in limbo. This is not how, because the Home Office is saying, presumably, if you allow unaccompanied minors to stay, then that is an encouragement, that's a full factor. If more people, unaccompanied minors, will come. So this is an assumption. So, we've got to challenge this. And the reality is that, we're not a country that, this idea that we are a proud country and we've done this and we have done that. The reality is we are a very hostile country when it comes, especially the government and the laws that have been passed and the hostile environment been intact, since Theresa May or even before that. It took me 5 years. It took me 2 years to challenge the age dispute situation, and it took me 5 years to get my refugee status. It took me 11 years to get my settlement, and it took about 14 years to get my citizenship. And the Home Secretary can basically take it away any day she wants. I went to, we'll come to it, but I went to Afghanistan after 16 years to see my mother, which was a surreal experience, a wonderful experience, and also a very sad experience to see the poverty, the extreme hunger, and the situation that has been left by the West. I was afraid of the Taliban. They're very unpredictable. Anything could have happened. But I was more afraid coming back to Dubai and finding out my citizenship has been revoked. So after living here for 16 years, I don't feel safe. I genuinely say this.
It's living with constant insecurity, which is hard.
So my citizenship does not have the same value as your citizenship.
Absolutely. I think what really strikes me when you're saying that is the rights of the child. So my children, for example, went to a school, infant school. My daughter used to come home. She would read out, drove me mad at times, but she'd read out the rights of the child until you went. But that doesn't apply, does it? It doesn't apply unless you're a British citizen. It almost feels like there's one rule. Children that are already here and born in this country, and children such as yourself who come here, those rights just didn't seem to apply.
And again, the local authority gets less money for unaccompanied minors than they do for other normal children. Even though unaccompanied minors needs are quite high. I think if they're not more support, at least they should be the same level. So that's why local authority are not very keen. So Kent used to struggle with unaccompanied minors because everyone arrives there, and the government made a rule that people could be dispersed, because before unaccompanied minors could not be dispersed. And then now local authority doesn't want to take them because they get less financial money for them, and their needs are quite high. And so just like, and again, if you invest in these young people, they will contribute, even though I don't like to talk about contribution, because this idea that we should welcome refugees because they contribute, they become doctors and nurses and scientists, which a lot of my friends are. engineers and plumbers and business owners and so on. But eventually they will make a difference. They will be citizens of this country and will be contributing if the law and legislation allow them to them. But the government is very clear. They don't want people to feel settled. They don't want people to think they could live here forever. And this idea that the immigration minister was recently asked, why are 170,000 people waiting for a decision? He said, if we make a decision, that will mean we are a soft touch and more people will come. So we're keeping people in hotels at a cost of £5 million to the taxpayer because they want us to be angry about it. But they're not making decisions, not determining cases. They don't have enough decision makers at the Home Office. And basically, every year by year, it's not that people has increased as such. We get about 30,000 asylum applications normally a year, but in the last 3 years we had 45,000 and 65,000 because Rwanda was supposed to be a deterrent. As soon as the Rwanda policy came in, 45,000 people came in. And then as soon as the new legislation was about to be passed, 65,000 people came in. So this idea the government now wants to put everybody in military barricades, want to put people in badges. They had a contract with an Australian company of 1.6 billion, and basically to some transportation cooperation company, so much for Brexit Britain and doing our own things and helping our own businesses. But keeping asylum seekers in limbo and detaining them without any outcome, basically. You can't deport 65,000 people. Where are you going to deport them? I mean, that itself is cruel and inhumane. Sending people to Rwanda because we can, because we have the money. It's just beyond me that we're at a stage where we think people like me should be sent to Rwanda because I'm a threat or, I don't deserve to be here. And, I need to be sorted out somewhere else because that's how it should be because we can.
You've just reminded me of this bit about the UK, the lovely bit in here where you say, I saw familiar faces from the various countries and places I'd stayed along the way, no one that I knew but faces I recognised. It never ceased to amaze me that we could have crossed half the world, yet Afghans always seemed to bump into each other. I suppose it was not too surprising given that we were all ultimately heading for the United Kingdom. I knew that for the majority of the people there, the UK was their destination. It's the idea, the notion, that because it's the hardest to go, it's the best place, the last stop, the end of the road. It's not the only reason, of course. Afghans have historical and cultural connections to Britain, either through the former empire or through war or language. Many have family already there. Also, the UK is seen as tolerant and fair to immigrants.
I've been told in a lot of places saying, we don't anything because if you're good to immigrants, more people will come. So we have a strange assumptions and this exceptionalism again, that we expect people to go anywhere but here. Like, France takes 100,000 asylum applications a year. Germany takes 170,000. Sweden, Italy, Greece, Spain, they all do more than us. And so we're not in the top 10 countries for hosting refugees. We're not, in fact, in the top 20 in the world. I think we're 17th in Europe. We host less than 1% of the world's refugees. In fact, in the last 3 years, we have welcomed 500,000 Hong Kongers and Ukrainians. Nobody says a thing, which is wonderful, but that is not available to anybody else. And so, we're not what we think we are. And not everyone is coming here. I do a quiz at school, and people think, we host 30 or 40% of the world's refugees when we don't.
Yeah.
And the reality is, again, people go where they feel safe. A lot of people stay in France. Of course, France could do more. There's issues of discrimination and racism and, accommodation issues, all sorts of issues. But actually, people get more money as an asylum seeker in France and Germany. In the UK, you get £37 a week. It used to be now it's £39 a week or whatever, £40 a week. The government has been very generous with the increase of like a few pence a week. But, in Germany, you get like £400-500 a month. It's good money, but it's not the money that people go with. It's not that, asylum seekers are not allowed to work. They can't collect benefits. So there's just so much. And we are the only country in Europe where we detain people indefinitely. But now we're going to do it on a bigger scale. So we're the only country where we fight for 28 days limit and putting asylum seekers in detention. I mean, people who flee wars and persecutions, we should be helping them. The least we could do, not detain them, not put them in a prison. I mean, my friend Shafiq was in prison for 6-7 months, just for coming to the UK to 6th century. And now, he's basically on a probation. So he goes to a probation, signing every week and an immigration reporting not to commit a crime which he has not committed. So it's a bizarre situation. I mean, I listened to a German ambassador a few months ago, and he said, we receive in force more asylum applications a month than Britain does in a year. So it's not that, we need to be playing our fair share. We can't expect people to go to other countries or if you're a genuine refugee, you shouldn't be coming here. That's not how things work.
And we're very fast if we haven't already lost our reputation with a lot of people in the world. This, as you said, this perception that people in Britain are fairly decent people.
People are. I think people are. Yeah.
The worry is obviously that these measures that are being imposed, for how much longer can we say that?
It's very thoughtless measures. I mean, I wish they were spending the same amount of energy and time and money. I mean, we give 120 million pounds to Rwanda for what? You know, and just to be cruel and send people 6,000 miles away. I wish they were spending the same amount of energy and money in helping people, in supporting them, in being humane. I know we can't give everyone asylum. The 30,000 people who claim asylum, not everyone gets asylum. People get detained, people get deported, although I disagree with it. I don't like people to be detained, but that's the process. I want the due process to take place, not have this hatred, this fear, and this racism towards people. We saw in Knowsley, there was riots against an asylum accommodation. A lot of local authority, a lot of local places don't want asylum hotels there. Asylum seekers don't want to be in a hotel. They're terrible. The government don't want them in the hotel, but then there are 6,000 people waiting in asylum accommodation whose decisions are not being made on their cases. So I mean, I could go on, but I think there's a lot wrong in Britain, and we are heading in a very dangerous way where we're going to detain people, put them in badges in the sea because we don't want people to see them. We want them to be, you know, there needs to be a distance between the general public and the refugees. And again, people will have no rights whatsoever, and their rights are being kind of, you know, taken away from them. So I'm very disheartened, and disappointed is an understatement. So I really worry. We're here celebrating Refugee Week, but I'm sorry I'm depressing you, but things are depressing. I have not seen any policies in terms of, making a positive difference. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, on that note, I think there's probably a few questions from the
That would be fab, yeah.
sure
We've got
from
time for a
the
couple of
from the
questions.
audience. So, Christine, I wonder if you'd.
Shove your hand in the air if you have a question for the two of us.
I'm Teja.
Hi.
And I just experienced a very bad thing recently. After I got my refugee status, we applied for travel documents because my son lives in Germany because United Kingdom didn't allow him to study here. Asked him to pay, then no other option. In Germany, he applied to German university, and he went to Germany because they accepted him. And but as a family, we didn't meet for 8 years. And this time, we wanted to. It was a very big event for our family, and after my husband did listen, and we booked a destination in Spain somewhere because we wanted to, celebrate that event, special event, as a family. And after my daughter got refugee status here, and when we realized we didn't have an issue to go to Spain, but before few days we realized we can't go without Schengen visa, and because of because it's something like
It's a requirement.
only for British passport holders can go there as a visa free entry, but we couldn't go. And then my son suggested instead of come to Germany because Germany allowed us to come.
Sure.
And then my son asked us to come and because he wanted to see us. And then when we booked flights, and my daughter booked flights through Australia, only 1 hour transit. Austria, Vienna, only 1 hour transit. But when we went to the airport, we realized we can't even to get transit for 1 hour without Schengen visa. And because but we saw they didn't remove from the list as visa free entry. They already removed Spain. It's okay. It's our fault actually. But however, we realized I felt like we were discriminated, like in that way because they said it's because of Brexit.
Sure.
But however, the people who voted for Brexit
No.
went without any problem because
Exactly,
they are British passport holders.
Yes.
And for us, and yeah, it was a very bad experience that I recently got as a refugee. I have got sexually because I was a women's activist, human rights activist back in my country, and because of that, I experienced a lot, and because of my work, we suffered a lot after we came here. And I already told Dora about my what my son went through, because he was just completed his 16th birthday. He didn't get a school, and lots of things actually. Bad experience sometimes. I don't know. That means even after we got our refugee status, problems. Continue.
Yeah.
That's what I
Sorry,
wanted to
sorry to hear. Thank you for sharing your experience. So I completely understand what TJ is saying, because I used to have a UN travel document. So as a refugee before Brexit, I could go to 15 EU countries without a visa. But thanks to Brexiteers, we couldn't vote, but we are the one being penalized, and we have to live with consequences. So Spain, Portugal, you could go, and I think Austria, you couldn't. I used to be able to go to a lot of places. Once you're in the Schengen area, you can go anywhere. It's not a problem. But going straight from here, it's an issue. So the rules, you don't know unless you look at the website. You have to check the embassy. It's just complicated. At the moment, you can only go to Germany, Switzerland, Italy, and Finland. These are the 4 or 5 countries which allow UK travel document holders to go without a visa. Everyone else, France used to not require a visa, but now it does. So yeah, sometimes thanks to our hosts or fellow citizens, we are in a situation where we're in. But yeah, I'm sorry to hear. But I hope you are able to go to Germany somehow.
we went to Germany, and we met us from there. It was a very big event for us. And yeah, it's but I think at least they must update all the
That information you have to look for it. Yeah, the UK they don't
Yeah.
say it unless you check on the website of the embassy.
No,
or
we checked websites. They didn't update.
Sure.
That's all.
Yeah, thank you.
Have we got time for one more quick question?
Yeah, my question is about in regards to your human negligence and the survival of human negligence. What are your emotions upon compassion and empathy in regards to the refugee week?
Great. I think it's a very good question. I think empathy and compassion are not just words. I think these are, this week, compassion into action is important. I think without empathy and compassion, what kind of human are we? I question if we don't have the concern and for our fellow human beings who are suffering anywhere, Afghans, Yemenis, or whomever, people in Syria, and we see the Uyghurs in China, the Rohingyas in Burma, and we see people drowning in sea. So I think as human beings, we ought to have compassion and empathy, because empathy is really important. It's not, and of course as well as sympathy. So I think empathy and compassion are two things that we as human beings should have and could have. It doesn't cost us anything. And I think we have the capacity and capabilities and abilities to actually, be kind, be compassionate towards our fellow human beings in their situation, and trying to understand and help and support them where we can. So certainly, I think this week's theme is quite timely. But I've been attending refugee week for the last 10, 15 years, and every theme is quite relevant. But as I was saying, I sadly haven't seen much action from the government. Of course, from the people we have this event, thanks to the good people of this area for hosting us. But the government needs to do more when it comes to policies. Or if they can't make good policies, they should not be making hostile policies. If they can't help refugees, at least don't make it worse for us. And people will continue to flee when there's wars and conflict, when there's persecutions and injustices, and Britain have a lot to do with this situation. So I think we need to be more open-minded and open-hearted and support people where we can. And if you can't support them, at least be humane towards them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to all. Thank you very much. It's been fantastic. There's a chance to network now, and there's some food which has just arrived. If anyone would like to eat anything,
Smells good.
there's also, I think there's some books left as well. If anybody would like a copy of Gulwali's books, and he would be happy to sign it.
Yes, of course.
So thank you to everyone for coming.
Thank you, guys.